17th conference of the parties, or COP17, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, underway in Durban, South Africa, wraps up tomorrow. International representatives of governments and organizations have been trying to hammer out a deal that would curb global climate change. Expectations for an agreement on how to do this remains low, but South African President Jacob Zuma and others are urging world leaders to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. African delegates have narrowed their focus on two key priorities: financing and renewed commitment to the Kyoto Protocol. Now, joining us on the phone from Durban is VOA correspondent Gabe Joselow. Gabe, thank you for joining us.
Yes, hi, Ndimyake. How are you?
Thank you so much. Great. So obviously this conference ends tomorrow, as we just noted. From the beginning, there was this speculation that there will be no agreement. What update can you give us along those lines?
Yeah, well, expectations were low going into the COP because the last two didn't produce any major agreement on a global pact to cut emissions. Nothing has been on the table like that since the Kyoto Protocol, which was enacted about 5 years ago, which does bind signatory parties to mandatory emission cuts. So right now, a lot of the talk is focusing on something that the European Union proposed, which is a roadmap to a future agreement. And the EU wants parties to agree to end negotiations on a new agreement by 2015 and for it to be in place by 2020. So right now, there's only a few hours left, really, before the end of the COP, and parties are really engaged in that discussion more than anything else. And what's happening is a lot of developing countries are putting their say in to clarify how their countries would be affected under a future plan, and everybody's just trying to work out exactly what that agreement is going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us specifically about the priorities that the African delegates in particular have spelled out. The need for financing. They're saying that they're committed to assisting in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions if they have financing, and also this extension of the Kyoto Protocol.
That's right. Yeah, African delegates today focused their message onto these two key priorities. One of them is a second commitment period for the Kyoto Protocol, which I mentioned before. Kyoto is going to expire next year, and already a lot of parties have said that they're pulling out of it, including Canada, Russia, and Japan, which are some major economies. But the European Union is still committed to a second Kyoto period. And the African Union and the African group here, while none of their countries are actually in Kyoto, they're interested in keeping that agreement in place because it's a viable framework. It also creates this carbon credit trading scheme where rich countries can basically pay poor countries to offset their carbon emissions. And it gives a value to that. And so by preserving Kyoto, you are able to incentivize mechanisms that would pay, potentially African nations to grow trees, to engage in projects that are eco-friendly, and would provide a monetary basis for that kind of activity. So that's why Kyoto is a big interest for African nations.
Gabe, there are a lot of organizations there on the sidelines of this conference who are trying to get their voices heard. We've profiled the women groups, and talk to us specifically about the youth. I understand that they're really stirring things up over there, especially the American youth.
Yeah. Well, in the last couple of days, we've seen some protests by two youth groups. Today, there was a young American girl who stood up in the main session of the conference here when the lead U.S. negotiator was up speaking and basically called him out, saying that the U.S. had been delaying progress on a major deal. She blamed the U.S. Congress for being politically uninterested in fighting climate change. And she was taken out by security and had her badge revoked. But she did get the attention of the negotiator, who at a later event, commented on what she said and tried to defend the U.S. position and not delaying anything, that they are serious about climate change.
Well, Gabe, thank you so much. We appreciate all your insights throughout this conference. That's Gabe Joselow, who joined us from Durban in South Africa.